On the night of her wedding, Azen was supposed to be the happiest woman in the village, but when she went looking for her husband, she found him in the arms of her own blood. Nobody saw this coming. The drums pounded in the heart of the village. Today, Azen was the happiest woman alive. Women clapped and danced in circles, their laughter filling the air. The men raised their gourds of palm wine, toasting to Chijioke, the brave hunter, the man every woman desired, but Ezine had won. Ezine stood tall, wrapped in a red silk wrapper, beads adorning her neck, wrists, and ankles. Her beauty was unmatched, her face glowing with joy. She watched as Chijioke, her husband, stood among the men accepting their praises, strong, admired, the pride of the village. And tonight, he was hers, or so she thought. As the celebration winded down, the village grew quiet. It was time for the newlyweds to retreat. Ezine sat on the woven mat, adjusting her beads. She waited and waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Chijioke never came. Her fingers curled into fists. Where was he then? A whisper, soft, barely audible. Azen stiffened. The whisper came again. She rose to her feet, heart hammering. Slowly, she stepped outside. The night was thick with silence. The whisper led her forward toward the sacred Iroko tree. She walked, and then she saw them. Her breath stopped. Two figures stood beneath the sacred tree, locked in each other's embrace. Azen's breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer, her bare feet sinking into the cool earth beneath the sacred Iroko tree. The moonlight cast silver shadows over the two figures, locked in an embrace. Chijioke's hands traced the curve of Dumebi's waist, pulling her close, their bodies pressed together as if they had done this 100 times before. Dumebi tilted, her head back, lips parted, a soft sigh escaping as Chijioke trailed kisses down her neck. His fingers tangled in her hair, his breath hot against her skin. Ezine's stomach twisted. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was passion, raw, forbidden, undeniable. Dumebi's hands roamed over Chijioke's broad shoulders, her nails digging into his skin as she whispered, "Tell me you don't love me." Chijioke exhaled sharply, his forehead resting against hers. "I can't," he murmured. "I never stopped." A slow, satisfied smile spread across Dumebi's lips. She knew she had won. Betrayal doesn't happen in a single moment. It builds over time in whispers, in stolen glances. Ezine and Dumebi were sisters by blood, but enemies by fate. After their parents' death, their grandmother had raised them. Ezine, the obedient one, bore the weight of responsibility. She woke before dawn, worked the fields, cooked, cleaned, and followed traditions. Dumebi was different. She hated rules. She was wild, reckless. While Ezine carried water from the stream, Dumebi would disappear into the forest, returning only with dirt on her feet and lies on her tongue. And yet, no matter how much she ignored her duties, she wanted everything Ezine had, including Chijioke. Ezine had waited for this wedding her whole life. The elders had chosen Chijioke for her since childhood. He was strong, brave, the best hunter in the village, the kind of man who brought home the biggest antelope, the kind of man who made women whisper as he passed. And he was hers, or so she believed. But the truth, for more than a year, Dumebi had been meeting Chijioke in secret. While Ezine worked, Dumebi found reasons to slip away. While Ezine obeyed, Dumebi stole moments with Chijioke. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal, and Ezine never knew. Until her wedding night, Ezine's hands trembled, her chest burned. Dumebi smirked, that wicked smirk that sent rage boiling through Ezine's veins. "Why, Dumebi?" Ezine's voice cracked. "You are my sister," Dumebi laughed. "Because you took everything that was supposed to be mine." Ezine turned to Chijioke. "Tell me it's not true." Chijioke lowered his head. He didn't deny it. Dumebi stepped forward. Oh, it's true. We were together first, before the elders forced him to marry you. Ezine's breath caught. That's not true. Chijioke finally spoke. I didn't want to go against the elders. Ezine took a shaky step back. So you played along. You married me while sneaking around with my sister? Chijioke exhaled, looking away. I tried to forget her. Liar. Dumebi scoffed. You never tried. You never wanted Ezine. It was always me. Ezine clenched her fists. She would not let this betrayal be hidden in the night. She spun on her heels and marched straight to the village elders. By morning, the village square was packed. Ezine stood before the elders, her voice steady. I was deceived, she declared, by my own husband, by my own sister. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The village chief's eyes darkened. What do you mean, child? Ezine's fingers curled into fists. Chijioke has betrayed our vows, and Dumebi, my own blood, has been his lover behind my back. Dumebi scoffed. And what do you want them to do? Punish me for loving the man who was mine first? Ezine lifted her chin. You say he was yours first, but was anything ever truly yours? The elders exchanged glances. Then Baba Ifa, the oldest elder, stepped forward. His voice was grave. Perhaps it is time she knew the truth. Ezine had already been betrayed once, but the truth she was about to hear would change everything. The village square was silent. The fire burned low in the center, casting long shadows on the elders' faces. The crowd pressed in, waiting. Something felt wrong. Baba Ifa, the oldest and wisest elder, stepped forward. His voice was deep and heavy with the weight of a secret buried for years. Dumebi, you were never Ezine's true sister. Gasps filled the air. Dumebi stiffened, her smirk disappearing. What? She whispered. Baba If nodded. Your mother was not Ezine's mother. The murmurs grew louder. Dumebi staggered back. That's a lie, she screamed. But the elders stood firm. Many years ago, your real mother was cast out of this village for adultery. She left behind an innocent child, you. Our hearts ached for you, so Ezine's grandmother took you in and raised you as her own. Dumebi's breathing became erratic. No, she whispered, no. The elders continued. Your mother dishonored our village, and we swore you would never inherit our family's land, respect, or marriage. Dumebi turned to Ezine, her voice shaking. You knew, she accused. Ezine shook her head. I never knew, she said. But maybe that's why you always felt like I had something you didn't. Dumebi's body trembled. Everything she had ever wanted, love, respect, a place in the village, was never meant to be hers. Her entire life had been a lie. The elders turned to Chijioke. And you, Baba Ife said, his voice filled with disappointment, you have dishonored not just your wife, but the sacred vows of our ancestors. Chijioke dropped to his knees. I was weak, he admitted. I was a coward, he continued. I loved Dumebi, but I feared the elders' decision. I thought I could have both. The village erupted in disgust. The chief raised his hand. Chijioke, you are no longer one of us. Slowly, he stood. He walked away. No one stopped him. No one looked back, and just like that, Chijioke was gone. Dumebi staggered backward. She had spent her whole life hating Ezine, envying her, believing that Ezine had stolen everything from her. But now, she had been chasing something that was never meant for her. She had stolen a husband that was never hers. She had fought for a place in a family that never belonged to her. The whispers of the villagers filled her ears. She was never one of us. She stole what was never hers to begin with. She brought shame upon herself. Dumebi couldn't take it. With one last hateful glare at Azen, she turned and ran. She ran past the village square. She ran past the farmlands. She ran past the riverbank where she and Azen had played as children. She never looked back. And just like that, Dumebi was gone. Days turned into weeks. At first, Azen expected to feel broken, but she did not. Instead of mourning, she worked. She woke up at dawn and tended to her family's farm. She led the harvest, trading goods at the market. She thrived. No husband, no sister, just her own strength. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Azen stood in the middle of her farm, the golden light washing over her. She closed her eyes, breathed in the crisp air, and smiled, because now she was free. 3 months had passed since Dumebi vanished. No one knew where she had gone. No one cared. But on a cold, moonless night, a scream shattered the silence. The villagers rushed out of their huts. At the edge of the village stood a woman, barefoot, dress torn, eyes wild. It was Dumebi, but she was not the same. Her once radiant beauty was gone. Her skin was pale, her body thin, and her eyes burned with something dark. The villagers murmured, "She has been cursed. She has walked with spirits. She should not have returned." Then she spoke. "Where is she?" Her voice was sharp, bitter, twisted by something unnatural. The villagers stepped back, and from the crowd, Azen stepped forward. Azen met Dumebi's stare. "Why are you here?" she asked. Dumebi laughed, but it was not the laugh of a sister. It was the laugh of something broken. "You think you've won, Azen?" Dumebi's voice was raw, hoarse. "You think because the village cast me away, I am gone?" She took a step closer. The flames of the torches flickered in the night. "I lost everything because of you." "You didn't lose everything," Azen said coldly. "You threw it away." Dumebi's eyes darkened. "I cursed you, Azen." Gasps, murmurs. Women clutched their children. The air grew colder. "The spirits have seen my pain," Dumebi whispered. "They have heard my cries, and they have answered me." That night, the winds changed. By morning, the crops withered. A woman's child fell ill, burning with fever. And then, the rain stopped. Fear spread through the village. "It is her," they whispered. "It is Dumebi. She has cursed us all." The elders called for a meeting, and when Azen stood before them, they asked her the unthinkable. "Do you forgive her?" Azen stared at the elders. "Forgive her," she repeated. Baba Ife nodded. "Only you can undo this curse, child." Azen turned to Dumebi, her sister, her enemy, her own blood. She took a deep breath. Then she spoke. "No." The village gasped. People whispered, their voices shaking. No one moved. The air felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on them. Dumebi stood still, her chest rising and falling fast. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She never thought this would happen, never thought the whole village would see her shame. Azen stepped forward. She didn't have to shout. Her eyes, dark and filled with pain, locked onto her sister. "You betrayed me once," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "You betrayed this village, and now you bring darkness upon us all." The elders shook their heads, their old faces full of disappointment. The village was more than just people. It was their history, their ancestors, their traditions. A betrayal like this wasn't just about Azen. It was a wound to the whole village. Dumebi's hands shook. "No, this isn't my fault," she whispered, her voice small, scared. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Azen looked at the elders. Her voice did not shake. "I will not forgive her." The wind suddenly howled through the village, bending trees, shaking the huts. The sky, once clear, turned dark. The air grew cold, thick with something powerful. Then boom! A flash of lightning tore through the sky, blinding everyone for a moment. The ground trembled as thunder roared. The spirits had heard. The spirits had answered. Dumebi screamed, a sound so sharp it cut through the storm. Her body jerked forward, as if invisible hands had grabbed her. She fell to her knees, her fingers clawing the earth. Her body shook, her arms and legs moving in strange, twisted ways. Her lips trembled, trying to form words. And then, silence. The wind stopped, the sky cleared. The heavy air lifted, no one spoke, no one moved. Slowly the villagers opened their eyes. Dumebi was gone, not dead, not alive, just gone. The people stared at the empty ground where she had been. No footprints, no shadow, nothing. Then, as if the sky had been waiting, the rain began to fall. Soft at first, then stronger. The dry earth soaked it in. The plants, weak and dying, lifted their leaves to drink. A mother gasped. In her arms, a child who had been sick for days opened his eyes. He took a deep breath, then let out a strong, clear cry. The village knew Azen had won. The elders turned to her. Their faces were no longer angry. They looked at her with respect. Baba If, the oldest of them all, bent his head. "You are more than a woman, Azene," he said, his voice slow, deep. "You are a legend born from betrayal, a legend made in fire." If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, and subscribe for more enchanting African stories.